Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Dieter Kurtenbach, returning to talk a little bit of this, a little bit of that in the NBA. We'll probably just kind of bounce around and talk about a whole lot of bullshit at some point. I mean, like, there are funny NFL things, like the fact that I took Le'Veon Bell #1 in my fantasy football draft.
Oh, no, Sam.
The fact that Jimmy Garoppolo, this isn't funny, but he's out for the year.
Yeah, what
and now,
the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, and now Dieter has to cover a 49ers team that is terrible for the rest of the year. So that'll be
that and a Raiders team that's currently 0-3. But there's a clear distinction on the two NFL teams that I have to cover. One of those teams is just generally uninteresting. The 49ers are now completely uninteresting. They're just not very good. They had a chance with Garoppolo, and now they don't have a chance, and their roster's not good enough to make things even remotely interesting. While the Raiders are also bad, but eminently interesting. Everything they do is a total calamity. It's fantastic. And, so luckily this gives me much more time to watch and consume and enjoy the game of basketball. I was getting a little bit concerned. I got to cover the A's, who are going to the playoffs, at least for a game. I was like, well, Garoppolo, who the hell knows with that? They might drag that out. The Raiders are a consistent train wreck. The Warriors might fall by the wayside a little bit here, just in my day-to-day as a Bay Area news columnist, because, well, shit, like, they're kind of a known entity. Not a concern.
Yeah,
not
like
a concern at all.
They're just not super interesting right now.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that this afternoon. It kind of made me sad because let me put it to you this way. Yesterday at Media Day, apparently it was like kind of quiet. And then today I went to Warriors practice and like there's a good crowd, but it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like the last 2 years, the last 3 years, the last 4 years. Everyone went down to LA and I kind of like it. Yeah,
like I feel like, yeah, you're right. Literally everyone was in town yesterday to cover all of the random happenings. Like I'm trying to
Did you see the difference between the Clippers media day and the Lakers media day in terms of like media scrub?
No, but I almost debated going to the Clippers media day for that reason. Like I never go to media days just because I don't find them particularly useful. Like I'll be honest. I mean,
Agreed.
For what I do at least. Like they're just not super interesting. So
it'd be super weird if it was interesting for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's not your shtick.
Like I just decided, hey, like I'm going to stay home. And if I would have gone to one, I would have gone to the Clippers one, though, because I know that I could have gotten like one-on-ones with Jerome Robinson or like something random like that. So
you could have had a conversation with people instead of fight for the bread line of, maybe a LeBron James quote. Yeah, I think you would have made the right decision. But I was in Kansas City because I was in Kansas City for the 49ers game, the faithful 49ers game. And so I missed Warriors Media Day. So I had only heard about it when I came back. But, like, I don't think I missed anything. They gave me transcripts on everything anyone said. And it's not as if I'm like, well, I have to get in this question at Media Day. Like, there's plenty of time. I appreciate it because, of course, it provided us with, like, Kawhi's laugh and other strange Media Day happenings. And I don't think the NBA should get rid of it at all. But at the same time, like, making it out to be important or interesting is a big old stretch.
Yeah, no, like, it's 100% useful. It's just not useful for me to go to it.
It's not even that useful for me to go to it, and like I have to cover a team. Yeah. Like on a like it wasn't a priority for anyone at the San Jose Mercury News to get Dieter back to Oakland in time for Warriors Media Day. Like we survived. But if you're like a beat writer, that's huge because. Though it isn't, because today we had anyone we wanted. We could, it was early in the season. It's the first practice of the year. We go in, it's like, I guess you can request anyone you want, like, because it's a totally fresh slate. Like yesterday, they just had to wear jerseys while they talked to us. I suppose. I don't know. It's going to be a long ass season for everybody. I think that's the only real takeaway I have. It's like, oh shit, we got to do this until June. This is going to be a while.
Yeah, the season will be particularly long in Minnesota, especially as this
segues.
Jimmy Butler saga continues to drag out. The Karl Towns news came down over the weekend. He has officially signed his 5-year, $190 million contract extension. That's a no-brainer, obviously. I wrote about that being a no-brainer because he's just historically good. The problem now is that apparently Tom Thibodeau, according to John Krasinski over at the site that I work for, The Athletic, has said that Tom Thibodeau tried to get Jimmy Butler to reconsider after his meeting last week, and that did not necessarily go well. Apparently, my other colleague, Shams Charania, stated that teams are kind of struggling with the communication process that is happening in Minnesota because it seems like Tom Thibodeau has very different views on how this should go than Glenn Taylor, the owner. Where do you stand on this entire shit show of a mess that is the Jimmy Butler saga?
Well, you nailed the word. It's a shit show. And I'm not... What Glenn Taylor needs to do is look at this scenario, okay? So Jimmy Butler came in. He was, I don't have a better analogy than this, I'm sorry, but he was an enema for a really bad organization. And Drano, whatever you want to call it, the pipes are getting flushed out and you got to deal with whatever's happening on the other end. What's going on is Jimmy Butler shows up. He goes, I don't think that Towns has the ability to take it to the next level. I certainly don't think that, Andrew Wiggins does. And I sure as hell don't think that Tom Thibodeau is going to get these guys in order. So, the conversations that have been, floating around that you just talk to people around the NBA, it's like Butler's known he's not staying for a while. And there might be some other stuff involved with that, but Butler knows that he's wanted out for quite a bit. And it just came to a head. And he was going to leave in free agency, but it's like, well, let's expedite the process a little bit, eh? I don't know how Glenn Taylor, the owner, doesn't look at this and go, well, we had two of the best players in the NBA. We have Wiggins, for whatever you might think he is, and I'm not very high on him, is still an immensely talented player who has lots of potential that you could argue still has lots of potential to maybe get to a top 20 spot in the NBA down the line. Glenn Taylor's looking at this and going, where's all this dysfunction? What is the pivot point of all of this dysfunction? It's Tom Thibodeau. And yeah, it didn't work with the players, but this is a players' league. And Jimmy Butler wants out. Tom Thibodeau is refusing to trade Jimmy Butler, essentially. Glenn Taylor's like, let's just get this over with. And why isn't the conversation now, they need to get Thibodeau out of his job, period? Because...
I think that is now the conversation.
Is it? Because it's our conversation, but I don't think it's dawned on Glenn Taylor that Tom Thibodeau is in completely over his head and completely inept in the position that he himself has made in many regards. So I do not think that that is the conclusion that has been reached. And frankly, I don't know how you can reach any other conclusion.
So that's a really good question. Is Tom Thibodeau in over his head, or is it a situation of stubbornness because he really likes Jimmy Butler and has worked with him for years now? I think it's kind of a combination of both.
Yeah, agreed.
Look, Tom Thibodeau was always not qualified to do this job, in my opinion. Not only in terms of basketball knowledge, because Tom Thibodeau is an incredibly smart human being in terms of basketball. Yes. He could probably run a front office if he wanted to, but running a front office while coaching, while being as self-interested as Tom Thibodeau is in winning and as wholly interested in winning as Tom Thibodeau is, as opposed to building for the long term and building for the future, that can be problematic, I think. And that is where this is all coming to a head and why he's overmatched for the dual job of being a coach and being a front office executive. So where I fall on this is I kind of think that Glenn Taylor has realized this and is...
But Glenn Taylor's a notoriously terrible owner. So I'm just not going to give him benefit of the doubt.
Glenn Taylor, I don't, notoriously terrible or notoriously meddlesome is a different terminology, right? Because he is definitely notoriously meddlesome. He definitely partly negotiated the Kevin Garnett trade, and he went over someone's head to do a couple of other deals as well, from what I remember. And I don't know that I would say he is a disaster owner. I would say that he wants to be involved, and maybe his basketball acumen is not quite as high as Tom Thibodeau's. Having said that, I think he
also hired Tom Thibodeau for both jobs.
That's also a problem. But what I will say is this. I think that what he maybe has realized is that this is a bad situation, and Tom Thibodeau is not the kind of guy that I want rebuilding my organization. So is the best way for me to go about this to leak that he is fucking up and try to get him to quit? after I eventually trade Jimmy Butler for a combination of current and future pieces? Yeah. Or do I try and keep Tom Thibodeau, the coach, the guy who led us back to the playoffs for the first time in 14 seasons? Like, right. It's an incredibly complex situation. Like, nothing about this is easy, in my opinion.
I disagree with that. I think it's very easy. Like, Tom Thibodeau getting credit for leading the Timberwolves back to the playoffs is ridiculous. Like, there are...
Sure. I agree.
I could name 100 other people that could do the same thing. Like, I'm not saying you or I could do it by any stretch, but, like, I'd venture to say that, like, Mike Brown, the Warriors assistant coach, could have easily handled getting Karl Anthony Towns and a Jimmy Butler-led team into the playoffs. Like, probably I feel like true. That's something he can handle.
Yeah, probably true. But here's the other thing, too. Like, maybe the leaks aren't coming from Glenn Taylor. Maybe
I don't think they are.
Yeah, I actually tend to fall on this side of the spectrum. I don't think they're coming from Glenn Taylor. I think they're coming from, like, other camps. Wouldn't surprise me if Jimmy's camp is leaking stuff. Wouldn't surprise me if Karl Towns' camp is leaking stuff.
Well, and this is my big thing. So Towns had been dragging his feet on a no-brainer, obvious extension forever, and so now he signs it, right?
Yeah.
Was there a concession made? Was there a statement made by the Timberwolves? Like, what made him stop dragging his feet? Because in theory, we were at the peak of silliness in all of this. Like, he had been dragging his feet when no one knew what the hell was up, and that him and Butler didn't get along and all that stuff.
Well, we were at the peak of silliness whenever Steven Jackson and Andrew Wiggins had their back and forth on Instagram.
That's not that's the thing. Like, that doesn't even have anything to do with this. That's just interesting. It's just weird and interesting.
It's all somewhat interconnected, but the Towns and Butler thing doesn't really have to do with Wiggins.
It's just a separate issue. It's 1,000% germane and in no way at all directly connected. Like, you're just like, oh, and that's happening. It's like, I guess that's involved in this story. Like, I would put it this way, and it would have to be an entirely separate news story. Like, just apropos of nothing, by the way, this is happening. But Towns signs this extension. He didn't apparently, I mean, he was going to, he was always going to, but he was exerting his control in a situation that was inevitable by dragging his feet. Well, and then he suddenly signs the extension. What was up with that?
Like, well, here's the power that he held over Minnesota. He held the power to where he could have said, I'm only signing a 4-year extension with a player opt-out after 3, instead of signing a 3-year extension or a 5-year extension with no player options, which is what he did.
Right.
So there actually was very real power that he was able to exert here.
It only lends itself more to the argument that the Timberwolves had to have made him a promise of some sort that this thing was going to get resolved. Otherwise, what was his incentive to sign that deal, the deal that he actually did sign, giving, as much as he gave in whatever sense you want to view it as? Sure. Like, why else would he do that? The only way I can think of, and I don't even know if it has to do with Tibbs, but either somebody told him either Tibbs is going to be out at the end of this year, which is probably an inevitability anyway, and we're going to trade Butler ASAP. And that would align with the timeline that Glenn Taylor is supposedly living upon and mandating from on high. But it doesn't, and who would be the one guy left out of that loop? If they're like, listen, Tibbs is gone at the end of the year, and we're trading Jimmy Butler. You know who they wouldn't tell? They wouldn't tell Tom Thibodeau that. Because the first part would be kind of important to him, and he would then be like, well, the hell, I'm going to trade my, the best player on my team, in his opinion, if I only have 1 year left here. Like, the whole thing is toxic, and ownership has so much to do with that. When you have a guy with full basketball operations power and control of the team, and he's not on the same page as the owner over a critical issue, that's bad ownership. I'm sorry. Like, at some point, the buck has to stop with somebody. And, like, I certainly don't hold Tom Thibodeau in the highest regard as a dual threat these days. But Glenn Taylor's got to take some damn responsibility in this thing and make a very clear mandate, a non-leaked mandate, and get Tom Thibodeau to understand this is the way it's going to go, and if you don't like it, fuck off. But that's clearly not happened.
Yeah, so I don't know who's at fault here. Someone is there is not just one player at fault.
Everyone's a little bit at fault.
Yeah,
everyone's a little bit at fault. But ultimately, the player, you have a generationally, a possible generational player in Karl Anthony Towns. an undoubtedly great player in the current day. You have a really good player. It's hard to overstate how good he is. Player in Jimmy Butler.
You have an All-NBA top 15 player in the league.
Right. Who wants the fuck out of town and has known that a lot longer than we have. And you have an owner that only seems to dip his toes into situations when shit is bad, and I have to think that there's a connection there, and a GM who doesn't know which master he has to appease in the scenario.
Yeah.
Like, everything trickles down from the top. That's an ownership issue. That's a Thibodeau issue. It's a Towns issue for not getting along with Butler. It's a Butler issue for not getting along with Towns. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but yeah, I kind of like, you got to burn this bitch to the ground at some point. I'm not saying, tank or anything like that. You can't do that when you have Towns, but like, I got to see more than just Butler getting traded here, because it seems like there are systemic issues in play that are all coming to a head because you have a character the likes of Jimmy Butler who can kind of bring all this stuff out. He's kind of like the Joker. He's just an agent of chaos, and it isn't bad. This is bad. It's confirming all of the terrible suspicions we've had about this team, a team that was historically terrible, or objectively terrible for years and years and years. There's a reason that was the case, and we're seeing why right now, that they can't even handle a good time in a proper manner. What the hell were they doing when they weren't good at this?
So, yes, this is a problem for Minnesota.
But like, it's a problem that I don't think can change, because like, Glenn Taylor's not going to sell the team. Well, so he gets a new coach. Maybe that fixes things. He goes and gets a new coach who can help Towns, get Towns to where he needs to go. That's fine. Ultimately, like, let's take into consideration that the reason that Thibodeau was given the job in the first place is because the Timberwolves were a terrible defensive team. Karl Anthony Towns is a terrible defensive player. So was Wiggins. And they go, let's go get in the guy who at one point totally revolutionized the way the defense is played in the NBA, a hard-nosed coach, a no-nonsense coach whose teams in Chicago were tough as fucking nails. Let's go get that guy. He'll turn our team into tough as fucking nails, and with all the talent we have, holy shit, the sky's the limit. Except that's not how it worked, and okay, that's a failure.
You know what, though? I will say this.
That's been the case for a while.
Like, I will point this out. They missed 23 games from Jimmy Butler last season.
Yeah.
And finished 2 games out of third place in the Western Conference.
No, I totally get it. But they were clearly a class below.
They were, no question. But is being a class below one of the 5 best offenses ever in Houston and one of the 3 best
Warriors.
Teams ever in the Warriors?
Right.
Like, is that
that's not a
turn
cardinal
your
sin.
nose
That's not a cardinal sin. But it's the conversation that we were having in the win total over under one. Like, okay, was that their ceiling? And if that's their ceiling, is that acceptable when you have Jimmy Butler and Karl Towns on your team? Like, when you have two top 12 players, and you and I disagree on this. When you have 2 top 12 players, you need to be in the arena, and they weren't even in the arena.
They would have won 50 games last year if Jimmy Butler is healthy. Like, for a first year of combining those 2 players, that's pretty good. Like, that's really good.
But like, then you also I don't disagree with that. But then you also have to take into account the fact that Jimmy Butler apparently since the middle of last year is like, I'm getting the hell out of here. This is a bad situation.
Oh yeah, no. They're separate. Like, to me, they're kind of separate though, right?
They're separate, but they're not. Like, yes and no.
They're only not separate because the same guy coaches and runs the front office.
Right. And I mean, we're seeing a very clear. We're seeing, time and time again that doesn't work. That you cannot both, cook the meal and buy the groceries. Even though, in theory, basketball is the one sport where you should be able to pull off both in an effective manner. It's not like John Gruden at the Raiders having to run the 90-man roster and the 53-man roster, and also, call all the offensive plays and all that stuff. Like, at a certain point, like, an NBA roster isn't very big, and coaching it is tough. Don't get me wrong, but like, you kind of know your dudes. You have guys who scout for the draft. It doesn't take that much time. Like, it's not the most. It's probably the easiest sport to be both a general manager and a coach in.
Good question.
And we've seen it done. And we've seen it done effectively in the past, for sure. But
you're probably right.
But that doesn't mean. But perhaps we're just past an era where the responsibility you can make concessions on either of those responsibilities. We're in the era of optimization and efficiency that by having to do 2 things, you'll just never be you'll never be great at either. And
because every other team has other people doing the job and getting a marginal advantage on you.
Right. And that's just not acceptable in this day and age. Like that might very well be the case. In fact, it probably is. But at the same time, if you're Tom Thibodeau, you're like, well, okay, I want to take this job. I got fucked over in Chicago, and there's no two ways about that. He did. I want some insurance, and the easiest insurance that you can have is, well, I'm going to take both jobs, or I have full control, and that's another way to get a ton of money. And if the Timberwolves were doing it at a time, the Pistons gave Stan Van Gundy the same thing. Doc Rivers had the same thing going on with the Clippers. Like there was precedent for it. It wasn't outrageous. This was a thing that was happening in basketball at the time.
No. Let's not absolve them from doing this, because
I'm saying that it wasn't like a unique concept.
No, but it was a bad concept from the start.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. My point is, and I don't know if the failure is because they didn't see that you can't do both effectively, or because they didn't realize that they didn't need Tom Thibodeau. Where that, not only was Tom Thibodeau probably the wrong coach to hire, though I explained, there was a rationale to it at the time. He was the wrong coach to hire. And then to give him the full control was even dumber. Like, for them to kind of take on that double whammy is a bad decision. I don't know if it was a decision made because they were enamored with Tom Thibodeau or because they couldn't identify a better option. Like, I don't know which of those two is the sin, but they're both bad. Nevertheless, like, we're seeing this. Is Tom Thibodeau? I think Tom Thibodeau is the only guy who still has sort of full control in the NBA.
He is. I mean, like, we can talk about like Greg Popovich, like ultimately Greg Popovich is the guy that like is making the final decision, but RC has a lot of power.
RC has a lot of power, and RC handles a lot more of the day-to-day than I think people understand. At the same time, that's right. Greg Popovich has total say. He's also probably the greatest coach in basketball history. So I don't know if I feel all that terrible about that. It's worked out pretty fucking well for the San Antonio Spurs over the last 25 years. So I think that's an okay situation. Tom Thibodeau is a little bit different than that. And ultimately, I think he was a good coach. I haven't seen anything over the last few years, and talent has something to do with it, no doubt. But your job as a coach is to optimize the talent, and we're seeing this. This is an interesting thought, perhaps. I don't know. You have to tell me. But we're seeing in the NFL right now how the spread offense and collegiate spread is bringing these air raid quarterbacks, these guys who played spread in college, the Baker Mayfields, the Patrick Mahomes, the Jared Goffs, and turning them into not just viable NFL quarterbacks, but extremely successful ones. And up until last year with Jared Goff's season for the Rams and Sean McVay, and you could argue even this year, but last year with that and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, the most successful air raid quarterback had been Nick Foles in the one season he played under Chip Kelly. And everyone else had objectively sucked. There had been like 40 or 50 of them that have been drafted out of air raid. So that's the Texas Tech style, 4 or 5 wide empty set, no tight ends, spread offense. And now you're looking at Mahomes, who is the definitive air raid quarterback. You're looking at Goff, who played in something called the Bear Raid here at Cal. You're looking at these quarterbacks, and they are being wildly successful because the coaches that they have stopped trying to make them prototypical players. Right. They stopped trying to turn them into prototypical quarterbacks, and they just embraced the skill set, and they adapted their game plans. Tom Thibodeau,
by the way, is going to be really fun with Hugh Jackson in Cleveland to see if he actually does this or not. But
watch him not. It's proving how important coaching is, and coach's job isn't. It has always been to optimize the talent that you have, and it has always been difficult because there are ideologies that come into play, and some guys are ideologues and some guys are pragmatists, and there has to be a balance between the two of those things. But Tom Thibodeau is an ideologue, and he is not very pragmatic. And so while he was a very good coach, he was a revolutionary coach in many senses, and I give him more credit than most for that Celtics title with Kevin Garnett because of the defense that they played and the fact that no one had a fucking chance against it. But he hasn't adapted. And the league has changed drastically over the last 10 years, and I don't think he noticed. I don't think it was a good hire at the time. Well, it's clearly a terrible hire now, and it's even more compounded than all that because he's the number 1, 2, and 3 in that organization.
The weird thing with him is, so he was out of the league essentially for like 18 months, something like that, right?
Yeah. Didn't he go on one of those tours like all the fired football coaches go on to like learn the airs of his ways?
Yeah, I mean, college basketball coaches do it too, which is
except they're mostly repenting over NCAA sins.
Yeah. But the 18 months where he was out of the NBA, it's kind of the 18 months where things so drastically changed.
Right. Yeah, no, that was the year that the Warriors just came out of nowhere. I mean, they were a playoff team the year before, but that was Tom Thibodeau was at a Warriors practice in Steve Kerr's first year, and he kind of hung around for a while.
It wasn't Kerr's first year. I think it was the 72 win year. Or 73, I'm sorry, that he was out.
Yeah, okay. I don't remember exactly clearly, but shit changed, and there was clearly a new way of going about stuff. And I don't know what the hell he was doing on that tour, because clearly he did not take very many of the lessons. You know, that he had a perfect opportunity to really come up with something pragmatic that would, or something brilliant. And clearly he has the brain power to do it, but he's too much of an ideologue. His balance is all out of whack. Anytime
you have Karl Anthony Towns on your team and you took the fewest 3-pointers in the NBA last season, not great. Not great. How does this Jimmy Butler thing end? We need to move past this. How do we think Jimmy Butler?
Yeah.
We can bitch about Tom Thibodeau all day, but how do we think this ends?
Probably would. I think he's traded. I think he's traded to the Clippers.
I think the Clippers make sense. I think Miami makes a lot more sense. Like, the more I think about it,
I love the Miami fit. I don't think that he would stay in Miami. And ultimately, I think that
I do. I'll make a case. But continue.
Okay. Oh no, I think it would make a lot of sense for him to stay in Miami. I don't think that he will do it. I think that he is hell bent on being in LA. That's just that's the rumor floating around, that he wants to be in LA and that he likes the idea of being the number 1 dude on the Clippers. And ultimately, Thibodeau is going to make a move that behooves him. And the Clippers, as we've talked about, have a lot of, decent dudes. They got 1 through 12, totally indistinguishable, just dudes.
So
and
the
that
big
means
question,
that they can give
I
up
think,
3 or 4.
With Jimmy Butler is the team that trades for him is going to have the ability to offer him 5 years.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the NBA want to offer him 5 years? If Miami is willing to offer him 5 years, $190 million if he makes the All-NBA team next year, okay, he will stay in Miami. He's not going to turn that down.
He would stay in Charlotte for the same deal. I mean, no one turns down that money.
I think it's an incredibly dangerous decision to do that, for what it's worth. I would not sign him for that money.
Which puts it absolutely in the Clippers class of signings. This is a risk signing in a lot of ways. And really smart teams don't do shit like that. They don't take those kind of risks because they know it can torpedo a franchise. So, I think Miami is, like it or not, Miami is one of those, second tier teams. It seems ridiculous considering where we were at, this decade, but Miami's in that second tier. The Clippers are in that second tier. They're in desirable markets, but they're not perennial contenders. They're not in a position, annually to compete for a title. Clearly, those are the kind of deals that those teams make and hope that they pan out. So I think that the bigger issue is what the hell do you give up for them? Because the Timberwolves, they don't even know if they're trading him or not, at least internally. I mean, it's clear that they are, but the dysfunction there is
not everyone knows that.
Right, not everyone knows that, including the one guy who would kind of need to know that, even though he's probably the one on the outs. Nevertheless, what does that package look like? Because both Miami and the Clippers can give up dudes in the present. They can fill out a roster. They can, amalgamate the impact of a Jimmy Butler type with 3 or 4 players. But
a Jimmy Butler type, like a Ryan Seacrest type in BoJack Horseman.
Exactly. I just got done watching 6 of those episodes. But so this season is so depressing. Nevertheless, is that what the Timberwolves want? Do they want something for the long term now that Towns is signed? What is it that they want? The fact that we can't say if the fact that we can't say definitively 100% that the Timberwolves organizational desire is to trade Jimmy Butler, and the fact that we can't say what the fuck they would want back in return at this juncture with everything that's already happened, only shows how dysfunctional that organization is. If I'm a team trying to make a trade, it's like, I'll just wait this out. He isn't showing up to work. He's going to hold out. I mean, I don't think he's going to play a game for the Timberwolves this year. And
it certainly seems that way based off of the reporting by John Krasinski.
Right. And so every day that he's not there, much like the Le'Veon Bell situation, the price tag goes down. And if I'm sitting there, if I'm the Clippers, I go I'm not giving up first round picks on top of, a couple of nice role players.
So that's kind of why I think the team that makes the most sense in terms of offering it is Miami.
What would be, just off the top of your head, what would be the trade?
So my idea would be Josh Richardson. My idea would be Justice Winslow. So you don't have to worry about dealing with Justice Winslow's RFA rights this summer.
Right. Yeah.
I probably would not give up Bam Adebayo.
I would not.
But you could do something like Josh Richardson, James Johnson, and Justice Winslow.
Why would they take on the James Johnson contract?
Because Thibs wants to win now. And James Johnson legitimately helps the Timberwolves. Right?
Yeah, no, he does, but holy crap. Miami,
Josh Richardson for 4 years, or for 4 years, because that extension kicks in this year.
Or Tyler Johnson, or is it Richardson only?
I would. Well, Josh Richardson's a lot better than Tyler Johnson,
disagree.
so I would ask for Josh Richardson. And to be honest, I'll say this:
Johnson. Yeah.
I don't know that Miami will give up 4 years of Josh Richardson for 1 year of Jimmy Butler. That is a reasonable opinion, in my opinion.
I don't think it's unreasonable, though. I do think it's wrong.
I probably
what's their
would give
goal
him
here?
Up. Yeah, I think I would give him up in the assumption that I could sign him. I could sign Jimmy Butler long term. But
this is the other thing too. Miami's super jaded from not even being in the conversation for top flight free agents the last few years, and the way that they have manifested that angst is by handing out big fat contracts to players that probably don't deserve them.
The problem is they gave out too many of them.
Middle class players.
Yeah, they gave out too many of them. Dion Waiters is probably overpaid by $3 million a year.
Right.
Then Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk's probably pretty fairly paid.
I agree with that. I like Kelly Olynyk a lot, especially when you have him with them too.
Goran
together,
Dragic,
those guys are played
probably fairly.
There's a
paid.
lot of guys. Okay,
Josh Richardson probably underpaid, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. Let me phrase it this way then. There's a lot of guys who are appropriately paid, but there's too many of, as you put it, there's too many of them on the same team because they value if we're not going to get anyone from the outside, then we're just going to take care of our own. And it's you might have taken too much care of your own now because you're not in a position down the line to really do anything. You probably should have considered not taking care of your own with Hassan Whiteside, who, by the way, would be the number one person I would try to include in this deal.
Well, yeah,
and then just hope that they can
too.
swing him to the Kings or something. I don't know.
Is Tom Thibodeau willing to take on Hassan Whiteside and add in Gorgie Dieng? Is that a road that he's willing to go down?
I mean, no. Well, fuck. I mean, clearly he has no problem with dysfunction, but
because Hassan Whiteside is better than Gorgie Dieng. Basketball.
Agreed.
And if you could do Whiteside, Winslow, and I don't know, something. I don't think you're getting Josh Richardson if you're throwing in Hassan Whiteside.
No. Well, I don't even think the numbers work out at this point. That's the other thing too. Miami, it's you give up. You can put together a package that is significantly better than what the Clippers could move. If we're just talking about kind of middle class players, right? Or these kind of second tier guys. But they're all making so much money. It's what the hell's coming back? How are we going to make this deal work? Jimmy Butler's one player who makes good money. The Heat have a bunch of guys who make pretty damn good money too. And so it's if it's Whiteside, the money's matched right there. Just one guy. So now you're adding in Winslow. Okay, that's kind of a prerequisite for this deal. But you can't add in Richardson unless you can get salary filler somewhere else. I think that if they trade Whiteside, he's going to a third team. There's no way that, while Thibodeau could probably make it work, and Lord knows that'd be one hell of a 1-2 punch at the center position. He doesn't. if you're trading Jimmy Butler, you need someone who's going to be on the court closing a game. And Josh Richardson's one of those guys that, maybe James Johnson's that guy. Maybe that's two of them. Two is better than one. I don't know. But again, if I'm the Heat, I'm not giving up all that much. I'm not. Where's the market? Like, what's the impetus to come in with a really great offer here? The Timberwolves have no leverage, so just wait him out because he's going to get moved. It's inevitable.
Okay, so here's a random one.
Yeah,
Jimmy Butler, Gorgie Jang, and Justin Patton.
How much does that add up to?
That gets to 38. This trade works. I've checked it. For Hassan Whiteside, James Johnson, and Justice Winslow.
Yeah,
that's a trade that helps nobody, by the way.
Right. I don't feel good about that at all.
No, nobody on either side of that deal should feel good about that trade. But
cool. Now we have Hassan Whiteside. Great return.
But if you're Tom Thibodeau, it would make sense why he would feel this way because you'd be getting a younger player in Justice Winslow who has potential to be useful in the future. You would be getting James Johnson who can legitimately step in and start right now next to Andrew Wiggins, and Hassan Whiteside exists.
Right. And maybe that's where the Heat are at. Maybe that's why the Heat would love that. I think that the Heat would think they would get better.
The Heat would get off a lot of money. The Heat get off of $40 million over the course of the next, however long, 2 years each, and then another year for James Johnson. So they're getting off of $95 million in salary.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that deal's going to happen. But, that's kind of where we're at, though, right? If it's Josh Richardson instead of Hassan Whiteside, you can almost make the argument that the Timberwolves win because you're getting a player with projectability, you're getting a player who can help you right now, and two players who can help you right now in Richardson and Johnson, with Richardson having some pretty good upside himself. That's a pretty damn good return and probably compensatory for a player the ilk of Jimmy Butler.
Just do something like James Johnson and Josh Richardson, or
I think that Winslow has to be the dude because if you're Tom Thibodeau, think about it, Justice Winslow's your kind of player. Yeah,
or say Justice the problem here too is that Dion Waiters is hurt, so his money it's hard to say if he'll get cleared to get traded. But you could do Dion Waiters, Josh Richardson, and Justice Winslow, and that's probably as good as Minnesota's going to do. I probably don't do that deal if I'm Miami, to be honest. Unless the only way I do that deal is if I'm willing to offer Jimmy Butler $190. If I think Jimmy Butler is worth 5 years, $190, and I'm willing to offer him that in the offseason, and I get to keep him for 6 years, that's a deal that makes total sense. But with only 1 year of Jimmy Butler, knowing that I can't offer that much money down the road, it's hard.
Mm-hmm. It's really tricky, and which is why ultimately I think he ends up for just a package of guys on the Clippers because you're peddling with a lot of risk. Just a lot of risk. And I don't know. Is there a dark horse team in your mind who should get involved in this?
That's a good question.
We got Clippers and we got Heat. I think we're all in agreement that those are two teams that are in this bad boy.
Yeah, I've been thinking about Brooklyn's not a dark horse team, but no. if I was Brooklyn, I would seriously consider making the move. They have easy money that they can match with Allen Crabbe. They have a guy in Karis LeVert that I think would be valuable. They could also match with DeMar Carroll as well if they want to keep Allen Crabbe. There's just a lot that you can kind of make a maneuver around with, essentially. If you're Brooklyn, you could throw in LeVert, you could throw in John and Musa, you could throw in Rodion Kurix. I don't think they're going to want to deal Jared Allen, but Rondé Hollis Jefferson would be an interesting move because he's a free agent this offseason. How much do you want to deal with that?
Right. And that makes them a much more desirable place in theory for Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, it absolutely does. That's a great point.
That is something that's listen, they don't need a free agent to make the leap. They sort of take control of their desirability into their own hands. To whatever extent, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you have to be aggressive if you're trying to convince people to come, and the easiest way to convince people to come is if someone's already there.
Yeah, and I think Toronto should consider this as well. Yeah. The only reason that I say Toronto should be hesitant, Toronto was someone that I pushed a little bit hard on the last podcast, but I've kind of thought about it a little bit, and the only reason that I think Toronto should be a little bit hesitant in this scenario is they're very well equipped right now to retool on the fly.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to do that if they go all in on 2 one-year guys.
Yeah.
You've mortgaged too much. Like this year, if it doesn't work out, like, okay, they're going to take a step back, right? If you lose Kawhi, they take a step back.
Yeah, if you lose Kawhi, you can move Serge Ibaka, I think, pretty easily on a rental contract for $21 million. Danny Green expires. You could easily figure this out. But
and you're probably a fringe playoff team in the Eastern Conference. Like, it's not the end of the world. You go all in on both Butler and Kawhi 1 year, and if you lose one, you probably lose both. Like, now what do you have?
Yeah.
Now you're blowing it all the way up, which maybe is something that they're willing to do. Clearly, Masai Ujiri is not risk adverse, but that's a pretty bold play. It's a pretty bold play. Here's a team though that's kind of, I don't even know if this makes any damn sense. You tell me. Why not Portland?
I don't think Portland can get there, like in terms of just players.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that they have enough talent to make a deal because they've said that they're not trading Lillard, McCollum, and Nurkic, or there's been a report out there or something. I forget exactly what it was.
That makes sense.
So you have to get there with salary involving Evan Turner, Maurice Harkless, or Al-Farouq Aminu.
Yeah.
They would essentially have to add Zach Collins. Like, I think that there's no way you can make a deal like this without adding Zach Collins. And I don't know how useful Zach Collins is to Minnesota because you already have Karl Towns. So
right.
I just don't – like, I think that they can get better deals elsewhere. The team that I keep, like, sneaky hearing is Milwaukee.
I think yeah. We've been hearing the same thing I was just about to say.
Yeah, like, you could easily just use Eric Bledsoe's money. You could,
but that's the other thing too. I mean, there's a lot of teams where it's just like, oh, you just need to get money moved around. But like the Timberwolves fancy themselves a team that's going to make the playoffs and makes it, get to the second or third round. Like they need dudes back today. So,
right. So like, is it Eric Bledsoe?
That's not going to do shit for them. Like even though they're point guard strapped, like no one wants Eric Bledsoe.
Right. Like I think you could maybe pitch that Eric Bledsoe is useful for a year for them, but. It's no long-term value. So what are you moving, like Dante DiVincenzo? I don't think DJ Wilson has much value.
I don't know how you can.
Is it Sterling Brown? Like, is it Eric Bledsoe, Sterling Brown, and Dante DiVincenzo?
That's a pretty damn compressed market. If that's the package that does it. Beyond that, moving them to Milwaukee. I mean, I know they're not in the same conference, but like proximity, not great optics there.
Well, I don't think that would matter, but like Milwaukee can't give up a lot for him just because there's no way he's staying in Milwaukee.
I don't know, man. He went to college in Milwaukee. He might love Milwaukee.
Yeah, but he's from Texas. Like he's not from that area.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, like, it's not as unlikely as him going to Cleveland, which, by the way, is a team that is rumored to be on the lookout, even though there's no feasible way that happens in my mind. I mean, the
funny thing about all of this is, like, it's not funny, but you could have made a pretty easy case for Denver before they moved, like, Kenneth Faried. They had to make those deals, and making the deals at the time that they did made total sense, and I completely understand why they did it. Tim Connolly made the right move at that time. But if they still have Kenneth Faried... Yeah, like if they still have Kenneth Faried, you could pretty easily make a package work.
And the only guy in the NBA who's like, Kenneth Faried can really do a lot for this team is probably Tom Thibodeau.
Right, like you could say like Kenneth, like they were willing to throw in Michael Porter. Like if you could do Kenneth Faried, Michael Porter, and like Malik Beasley.
Yeah, I bet Tibbs pulls the trigger on that.
And like I don't think maybe they would give up Mason Plumlee, and maybe Minnesota would be interested if they threw in Michael Porter. But like I don't know.
What about this? What about this ridiculous concept? What if the Wizards trade Otto Porter for him?
I would not do that.
I wouldn't do it either because I don't think there's that much of a gap between the two. Obviously, Butler's in a different class, but like Porter's so very good and
I'd rather have the player control. I think
I get it, but like there's a certain combustibility to all of it that you might as well just lean into.
Dwight Howard, Jimmy Butler, John Wall, Bradley Beal, Austin Rivers, Markieff Morris.
Yeah, like let's just like make all of the NBA meme creators' lives a lot easier.
Why are you trying to make like Jeff Green's life more difficult? Like Jeff Green and Troy Brown are like two of the nicest people in the NBA, and you're just like trying to like make them go through that for a first year together.
Listen. If you can survive LeBron, you can survive anything, Jeff. But and Lord knows Jeff's gone through a lot tougher shit than this. But
yeah.
I mean, with the meme Vengers out with the Lakers, and you gotta get some East Coast balance here. We gotta find the right amount of weight for the scale, and I think the Wizards being the preeminent dysfunctional franchise on the East Coast is gotta be something that the league wants to facilitate here, and I think that the easiest way to do that is to get rid of the most competent baseline reliable player on that team. And trade Jimmy Butler for him, who, by the way, is a basketball player, but a little possible.
The last one I'm going to throw at you before we move on is Charlotte.
Okay. Let's talk through this Charlotte one, because that's one where it's just like, man, like why would Charlotte go in knowing that even though I said that he would for that money, like I'm not sold that he would for that money. Like Charlotte might be the last place he locks in. Well, if he gets that 5-year deal.
Here's what I would say. Charlotte, it actually might make sense to do a rental like this. Mm-hmm. Say you move Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, you get off of some of his money. They would have to be willing to give up one of Miles Bridges or Malik Monk, though.
Honestly.
And I don't think I would do that.
Really?
I don't. Not for them, because they can't get anyone. Like, you can't go out and get free agents there. Like, you really only have the variance of drafting young players.
But that's the same argument to go out and make a trade like this. Like, he's not coming to you otherwise. It's an argument that the Raptors made when they went and got Kawhi to a certain degree.
But the Raptors are coming off of like 5 50-win seasons in a row. Charlotte is coming off of like wild inconsistency,
which is an upgrade. What's the incentive? Let's say they pull the trigger. Let's just say they're not as high on Monk as they once were, which is probably a fair place to be, and they pull the trigger. Where does that leave them? Because this is still a team that we're not sure if they're going to be intact for the rest of the year. Now we're adding in a guy who is most likely on a 1-year rental. Like, what's the end goal here?
Well, let's say that you do give up. I would not do this. But
it's certainly a possibility.
Let's say you give up Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and Malik Monk for Jimmy Butler. You now have Kemba and Jimmy Butler as your 1-year centerpiece. That team wins 47 games in the East, I think.
Which I guess puts you in contention to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as if there's some clear runaway winner of that.
And let's say
I think there's 3 really good teams, but that puts you up there.
And they still have like an $8 million Dwight Howard trade exception that they can add like a useful player with later in the season. But let's say this all blows up and shit turns south.
Right.
Do you think you can get back? You're not getting back Malik Monk for Jimmy Butler, for like a deadline deal for Jimmy Butler.
Right.
But you can probably get back 50% of Jimmy Butler. 50% of Malik Monk for Jimmy Butler.
But we're talking about at the trade deadline?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a lot of time to figure out if it's working or not.
Well, it's 50 games, and you're assuming that it'll work or it won't work.
Yeah, I feel like Butler's more subtle than that. Clearly. Like...
Well, I'm saying purely you do it for this year. You try and prove to Kemba, hey, Kemba, we're trying to keep you here. And you say, hey, this is going to work. And it's obviously shades of gray in this scenario.
Yeah, of course.
But you do this. They go out and they win 30 of their first 45 games or something like that. Then you're like, great, this is awesome. We're going to make a run toward the playoffs. And if we lose Jimmy in the offseason, if we lose Kemba...
The argument here is it's a more combustible Oklahoma City situation.
Well, it's a worse Oklahoma City situation.
Right. Like, combustible's the wrong word. Sorry. I'm overusing it. It's the same situation that the Thunder faced when they went and got Paul George last year, which is we're going for it, even though Russ was under contract. Like, we're making... Yeah. We're proving this to somebody.
But the problem here is, too, that if you move Malik Monk and both of these guys leave in the offseason anyway, then you're just totally fucked. Because
you kind of totally fucked regardless?
If Kemba leaves, I think you're kind of screwed anyway.
Right, like, great, now you have a Malik Monk. Like, I think I'm high on Malik Monk, but, like, I clearly he's not the guy. I'm willing to just say that he's going to be a nice, solid role player in the NBA, and like that's not special. He's replaceable.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's.
I don't know that I'm 100% there on him, but I think it's fair.
No. I hope I'm wrong, but the writing's pretty clearly on the wall. Maybe that's just from Charlotte not getting inundated with updates, and I'm not the most plugged into the Hornets. I don't know who amongst us is, but the lack of Malik Monk's doing some cool stuff coming out of that camp is he
was good late in the year. I will say that
he was
very good late in the year.
I thought he was a steal when the Hornets got him, and obviously struggled with some injuries, and I want to see Malik Monk do good. I think that his skill set fits what we're looking for in this modern game perfectly. I just don't know if it's there. Some guys just don't. Some guys don't live up to the expectations. That doesn't mean they're bad. Just they don't get there. I would hope, though, for the Timberwolves that there's just some damn resolution soon so that they can get on to stage 2. Because once Jimmy Butler's gone, the problems still exist. And they need to figure out. I would hate to waste this season in so many regards. Don't let Tom Thibodeau make this move if he's not going to be in charge next year.
Yeah.
So what the hell are we doing here? You can fire a coach in season. We saw the Suns fire their coach after 3 games last year. It's the Suns, a little different, probably massively different, but it's not that outrageous to make that kind of a change. And so it's don't slow play this. It's blown up. It's over. If you're gonna have a new organization here built around what's best for Karl Anthony Towns, get on with it. Because the more time you have between now and next off season to figure out what it is working and not working, and you get to sort a lot of stuff out. Maybe the guy that you bring in as the interim, I don't know who the hell it would be, is the right guy for the job. Maybe he isn't. Maybe you can try out a couple of interims. It doesn't matter. You get a whole year to interview GM candidates. There's a lot of advantages to just getting this over with early, and beyond the fact that you should just never prolong the inevitable. And ultimately, the inevitable is this: Jimmy Butler is going to leave Minnesota, and Tom Thibodeau is not going to have the full control that he currently has come next season. And I would venture to say that the right move would be to double can him and get a new GM in who hires his own coach. I don't know if the Timberwolves are logical enough to make that happen, but that seems to be the inevitability at this point, and it's a weird time for those inevitabilities to be coming to a head.
Let's do just some quick fire things around the league. And for us, we mean just kind of talk about them for 25 minutes and then move on. Elton Brand is now the new general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers. Bit of a unexpected hire in many ways. You would hear that there were some external candidates that they looked at. They looked at Gerson Rosas from the Houston Rockets. They looked at Justin Zanuck from the Utah Jazz. Even in terms of internal candidates, they had a few others that were higher on the ladder than Elton Brand. Mark Eversley is a good example of that. Instead, they do decide to go with Elton Brand. What was your immediate reaction whenever that happens?
I think it's a vote of confidence in Brett Brown. And
I think so, too.
The way that he had kind of handled the situation since the shit hit the fan. I will say this. Anyone who knows him, anyone who's been around him, knows that Elton Brand is a very, very smart man. And there are worse qualities to have in a GM, even if he is sort of just a ceremonial guy who goes out there and gives press conferences. He's damn good at that. That's a good hire. So I don't know what his full role will be, how much actual general managing he will be doing. But as a guy who's going to be good in press conferences, that's an A+ hire. And ultimately, the Sixers clearly have a lot of faith in Brown to drive this home. I think that the Sixers still think that they're a superstar away, but it doesn't really matter if Elton Brand is the GM or if you or I are the GM. The Sixers are going to sort of determine who that third guy is by the level of play that they put on the court over the next year. If they look like a legitimate title contender, they're going to be an interesting landing spot for free agents. If they look like they're stalled out, then they're not going to be. It's Philadelphia. So I don't know. I think we'll find out here in the next couple of months exactly what it is Elton Brand was hired to do. But I think we're leaning that this is more of a ceremonial role and a guy who's just there to look good for the camera and say smart stuff. And I think
it's both. I think he will play a pretty significant role. They have a huge front office now, for what it's worth. Like they have a lot of voices, a lot of smart voices in their front office as well. Brett Brown, if you made me guess, is maybe the strongest, but yeah, Elton, it's going to be fun to see. Yeah, voice. I mean,
no, for sure, and the fact that he was the interim GM indicates that's the truth. Like that really doesn't happen all that often. That kind of stuff. Like there were plenty of guys available. Elton Brand would have been a great interim GM. Like, that's a guy that you can put up there, and at least he'll project something confident for the organization. So, you're absolutely right on that. They have a huge front office. They have a lot of smart basketball people. They're as analytically minded as any organization in basketball, if not the most analytically minded. They do not lack for brain power, and this does nothing to curtail where they were going. In fact, it might optimize it in some ways. We'll see how much power Elton Brand has. This is not. I don't know if there's any good analogies for this around the league. To be honest, it's not even close to Magic Johnson taking over the Lakers and hiring Rob Pelinka. There's nothing. I can't think of a similar scenario. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I agree. Elton Brand's a guy that if you talk to people around the league, incredibly nice guy, very, very sharp. He's always been very, very smart. Was always kind of expected to go down this route. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we don't really have a whole lot of information on what his acumen in terms of pro personnel is, other than him being very smart and being very, very emotionally intelligent, smart dude, kind dude.
Let's put it this way: some guys, some general managers are just the best scouts known to man. They were elite scouts, and now they are the top scout of a scouting department. There are other guys who are really good at understanding how the ex-coaches, and so they really understand how to get the most out of players, and they can find diamonds in the rough and guys who fit systems and things like that. There are other guys who are just CEOs. They're just guys who know how to manage people, who know how to work with other people, who are smart enough to obviously have an understanding of what people are working on. They're going to bring in smart conversations, but they know how to delegate. I think Elton Brand's a CEO type, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, a lot of the most successful general managers are just CEO types. So maybe he's not. Maybe he turns out to be this brilliant scout. I don't know. He certainly has the brain power to kind of be whatever he wants, but you shouldn't have any issue with the Sixers after everything that just happened, going out and just hiring a competent, likable CEO type to be the general manager of this team. They will not lack for intelligence and scouting and insight if all he does is wave and kiss babies.
Anthony Davis changed agents. He is now signed with Rich Paul and Clutch Sports. I mean, I often think that we read too much into these things. Just without knowing a lot of the factors from the outside. I think there's a reasonable chance that Anthony Davis is signing with Clutch because of things outside of basketball.
That's
he
where
wants
I'm at.
to grow his brand, and very useful to his brand, and very, very useful to his potential, long-term viability in the entertainment industry.
I think that's where he's at.
Also, the fact, though, that the Lakers have a max contract spot next offseason.
I wonder what Rich Paul would have to do with that.
Oh, man. That's going to be talked about ad nauseum over the course of the next year and a half.
Yeah. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, ultimately, and here's the thing. Even if point A, which is the point, where he's doing this for the off-court stuff and the media brand, because frankly, Anthony Davis, he's a smart guy. He's a likable guy. He's recognizable because of the unibrow. He should be in more commercials. He should be more of a spokesperson. And, New Orleans might not be the biggest town, but it has, Drew Brees does just fine from being on the New Orleans team. So Anthony Davis is the caliber player he is, he should be in more stuff. So I would hire an agent who can help me be in more stuff. But the more stuff he does, the more likely the outside world is to think that he's going to the Lakers next year.
Probably true.
So it's a catch-22 in that regard, and we're not going to have a resolution until we have a resolution. No one's going to get any insight until we actually have a resolution. So,
and speaking of the Lakers, They had their media day yesterday. I would say that like the only eventful thing that happened really was just LeBron being introduced, but like that's like newsworthy in its own right.
They took a photo of Michael Beasley, JaVale McGee, Rajon Rondo, and Lance Stevenson together, 4-man group. That was highly eventful. That was a great meeting of the minds.
That's a group right there. I love all of those guys except for Lance individually.
Right.
It's going to be very fun.
If LeBron can pull this off, and somehow this is all LeBron's doing, such is his greatness that he now has responsibility for the entire franchise. But if he can direct Luke Walton to make all of that work, I'm willing to reopen the GOAT conversation. Jordan only had to deal with Dennis Rodman. Like, it's a big difference when you got like 4 Rodman types on one team.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
What could go wrong? I don't know.
Kyrie Irving just continues to not give any clarity on what his free agency situation is going to look like this offseason. It is interesting to me just because they have very clearly built this roster around him in a lot of different ways. And he's kind of the perfect fit there. You would think that it would make sense for him to resign and extend. I am very interested in seeing how this ends up playing out because they're like just a different dude. He is a very different human being.
Yeah. Ultimately, we're seeing a little bit of this. I'm sorry to pull this back to the Bay Area, but like Kevin Durant signed a 1-1 this year.
Right.
And so the conversation at Media Day yesterday was like, hey, are you staying? And it's like, we'll find out. I'm going to enjoy this year. And everybody, feels fine. It's no issue. But like, there is, we are in a players league, and we could thank LeBron James, along with a lot of other people, but LeBron James, for making, this a truly players league where they hold all the power. Yep. And we see this accelerated every summer. Even this Butler situation in which he's not even necessarily in the right, he gets to call the shots. So Kyrie would be foolish to give any insight into what he's going to do.
Well, here's my take, which is one of the weirder takes I think I've had on this podcast. I think that because of how 24/7 the news cycle is in the NBA, and particularly how large the off-season economy has become in the NBA, where like it's literally as big as the games that actually happen, if not bigger. Then player movement is so closely watched, and the CBA is so well known now, and like all of this. All of the attention paid to player movement. I think it's actually now like beneficial for players to just stay in the news and continue to have their name bandied about as potentially leaving, potentially staying. Because it continues to give them notoriety, and it continues, it continues to give them notoriety. It continues to give them branding. Like it actually just keeps their name in the conversation in a way that, like for instance, Stephen Curry, he was in the conversation last year because the Warriors won the title, but it wasn't like a full year thing where he was in the conversation.
We're not getting Steph mania anymore.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like wild. Like
he's on the Warriors. He's going to stay on the Warriors for the next 3-4 years. There's no drama.
Right.
And ultimately, this is a reality TV show.
Right. Exactly. And like. I'm trying to think of another example, like Rudy Gobert. Like nobody talks about Rudy Gobert, even though Rudy is probably one of the 20 best players in the NBA because Rudy signed. Right. But people talk about DeAndre Jordan all the time because DeAndre Jordan was not signed. So, and like Rudy is very clearly a better player than DeAndre at this stage, like not even close.
Right. But that is the clearest example. I mean, just I don't necessarily disagree with that take.
It's a weird take, I feel like.
I don't think it's that weird. I think everything you said is very cogent and makes a lot of sense. I think you're maybe giving Kyrie more credit than he deserves. Though, I do think...
But, like, Kyrie was just in a movie this summer. Like, he's done pretty well. He is... Like, Kyrie is, what, a top 20 player in the NBA? Something like that?
Yeah. But he has a great brand.
He has probably the second best selling shoe out of all active NBA players right now.
Well, and you can thank Nike for that, because they decided that Kyrie was going to be the face of the cheapest shoe. He was going to be, the one that appealed to 13-year-olds. And 13-year-olds buy a shit ton of sneakers.
I buy a shit ton of sneakers. I love Kyrie's. He got a little bit lucky on this one too.
That's what I'm saying.
Insofar as like they made the best shoe for him. Insofar as, I mean, like comfortability wise and looks wise.
With Kyrie, they determined that he was the coolest of the players, and it's an easy sell. It's the same reason that Under Armour was so enamored with Steph. There's an everyman quality to him because he has wicked handles, which is definitively of the Instagram generation. That is the best thing to have, even more so than cool-ass dunks or, the Steph Curry threes. Like, being able to ruin somebody's ankles, top desirable quality. So you have that. You have the fact that, he's extremely well spoken. He's kind of friggin' weird, so you never really know where he sits on anything.
But we didn't know Kyrie was this weird when Nike signed him.
No, when they came up with sort of the branding for Kyrie Irving, they did a really good job in figuring out what it is that the younger demographic would want. And ultimately, and let's also take into effect, when they signed him, he was Robin to Batman.
Yeah.
There is a play there. LeBron was going to have the more sophisticated shoe, the real basketball player's shoe, the armor kind of shoe. And Kyrie was going to be the fun, we're going to go play on the playground. And, of course, he's a playground legend there. Durant was going to be...
You know what the funny thing is now, though?
Yeah.
I probably see players wearing Kyries, and this is at the grassroots level. This is at the NBA level. You can't really choose in college.
They're 50% cheaper than the LeBrons.
Right, but it's people who get shoes sent to them. It's not like they're paying for these shoes.
No, valid.
They choose to play in Kyries because Kyries are the best shoes to play in.
I think it's a lot easier to send shoes that cost 50% less for Nike to ship out, though. I mean, if Nike's shipping out shoes, they're not going to send everybody $225 pairs of LeBrons.
That's probably
that's not even the point. I think that you and I are both coming from the same spot, which is that it is in Kyrie's best interest to not let anyone in on what he's going to do. And your rationale, and I don't think this is incorrect, is that it keeps his name in the cycle more. It makes him more intriguing and desirable, and that is the number one commodity that you can have.
By the way,
in this day and age.
I'm not saying this is happening specifically for Kyrie. I'm saying that in general, I think a lot of players are doing this.
Right, and I think that along those same lines, because it's such a players' league. Players are more important than teams. I mean, ultimately, players come together to make teams, but the player brand is more important than the team brand, even for the Boston Celtics, because Kyrie will still be a great brand if he's playing in Utah. Maybe not as great, but a great brand nonetheless. He is an entity that is as big, if not bigger. We saw this with LeBron and the Cavs. The Cavs are nothing without LeBron. He was bigger than the team, and that team had Kyrie. But because all of these players, perhaps for the reason that you're mentioning, perhaps because they want to constantly put themselves in the best situation for their career, and the constant movement. I mean, things are just moving so much faster than they ever were. And there's so much pettiness and drama and subplot and all this stuff. At a certain point, if I'm Kyrie, I don't even know if the Boston Celtics are going to be the best spot for me at the end of the year. I might want to go somewhere else. But something might happen. If you have the ability to keep your options open, you do it. And perhaps that's a self-serving media play, but probably it's just because shit in the NBA changes every single second, and radical stuff happens all the damn time. And don't lock anything down in a league that is proven to be anything but permanent.
That is definitely a fair point.
We're on both ends of Hamlin's razor right now.
Yeah.
Which is to never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity. There might be a better razor for this.
Oh, my God. Kristaps Porzingis doesn't know when he's coming back. DeMarcus Cousins doesn't know when he's coming back. I think there is a reasonable chance that Kristaps does not play this year.
I think that's at a certain point, if you're the Knicks, is that not the best move? I don't know. I think that it serves them.
Well, the best move is cultivating the best relationship with Kristaps Porzingis that you can. If he wants to come back and play and you see that he is 100%, sure, play. If he is anything less than 100%, don't play.
Right. And ultimately, it depends on what Kristaps wants.
Yeah.
I mean, if Kristaps wants to play, then you're right. The number one goal, make sure that Kristaps Porzingis signs that mega extension. Whatever you can do to make that happen, do that.
Yeah. Cousins, you were at Golden State today.
Yeah, it sounds like he isn't practicing with the team or anything like that, but it sounds like he's going to get into practice here pretty soon. The timeline, they're going to, they basically told us to fuck off for a month, and then we'll we'll tell them to, here's how long you have to fuck off until we'll tell you to fuck off again. That's kind of how things go. But, I still think that he's not going to play until 2019, and it might be deep into 2019. But the fact that he's going to, get a little bit of run in with, on the court with his teammates in Golden State in the near future is a pretty good sign. And, we will not know until he's on the court for a couple of games if he'll ever be the same DeMarcus Cousins again. But the Warriors obviously don't need him to be, all-pro DeMarcus Cousins or anything like that. There's plenty of optimism around there, but again, this is a team that's just sort of like, when do the playoffs start? And they want to make sure that Boogie's there for that. So even if he is ready to go, they're probably going to slow play it, because not only is that behoove them, in the sense that he's not going to be he'll be 100% when he gets on the court, but it behooves DeMarcus. I mean, one of the reasons he's with Golden State is because he was not going to get rushed onto the court, and this is a guy who wants to get a massive contract. And if he goes out and puts together 15 regular season games and a massive playoffs, someone is going to, and he looks just like the old guy, someone's going to give it to him. If he comes out and tried to play 45 games and never really looks like himself, he's not getting that monster contract. So, don't expect him anytime soon, though it doesn't, don't read into that too far. This is a deliberate slow burn. Anything
else from media days that you noticed that you care about? Anything?
No. I mean, other than Kawhi Leonard's laugh, which is it literally haunted my nightmares.
What did it remind you of?
It reminded me of, I think I tweeted it. It was a laugh so you don't cry situation.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the butt of the joke and you're trying to get along, but really deep down you're hurt. Though I did appreciate the joke that a lot of people clearly made, because I've seen now 10 different versions of the same tweet, which is when your boss makes a joke and you're trying to get that promotion. That was probably the most apropos. But I felt the hurt. I don't know. Maybe that was just because I was watching BoJack Horseman, but I was feeling the hurt in that laugh.
It reminded me of when Jay-Z gives his bemused laugh to white people trying to be hip. That's what I thought it was. He was.
Nope, that's my new favorite. That's the new one. That's the winner. That is exactly correct.
I was sitting there. I'm like, this isn't a real laugh. This is oh.
Actually, here's the thing. I think that's a real laugh.
It really might be. We've never heard him laugh. We don't know.
Yeah. I haven't checked. I mean, did the Toronto media roast him or something for that? I mean, I don't know. Obviously, most any market in the U.S. would be did you get a load of this shit? Whereas in Toronto, they might be so jaded that they're just no one mentioned anything about Kawhi's laugh. We're trying to keep him here at all costs.
I love it. I love that laugh. It was everything that I needed from a media day.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't need to hear about Enes Kanter's nipples when it comes to flash. Which, by the way, very flaccid nipples.
Enes Kanter. Oh man, I love Enes Kanter. Good for him.
I like him, but no. I don't think those nipples are going to be getting hard anytime soon.
No. Is there anything else going on? Anything that you need to get off your chest? We could talk about Essendon trying to re-sign and sign a bunch of free agents in Australian football.
Yeah, no, I ultimately as a Carlton fan, I don't think that we're going to be having that conversation. But I will say this. We got into it a little bit. I watched that. I was at that Chiefs 49ers game on Sunday, and Patrick Mahomes is so goddamn awesome.
He's wild. He's great.
It is. I have been like number one. Like air raid quarterbacks don't make it in the NFL, and like Kevin Clark on The Ringer wrote just this wonderful thing that kind of put into. It did a really wonderful job of actually talking to people and not just explaining what I kind of been thinking, but like essentially, and we talked about it earlier, like coaches have figured out that you just do the air raid at the NFL level and you don't have to worry about shit, and it's like it is so tantalizing mentally to think about how the NFL, I think, is about to enter a very similar era to what the NBA just kind of went through in the 3-point revolution. I think the spread offense revolution is going to be happening like wildfire at the NFL level. And I am, as someone who kind of learned to love football by watching the Big 12 in the mid to I don't even know, like 2005 to 2010. I don't even know what that era is called, the aughts. I'm all for it. I'm just so all for it. Terrible bubble screens for everybody. 90 passing plays a game. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, like, I can't tell if I think that is a good idea or not, just because, like, I mean, for everyone. Like, I think teams that have guys like Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes and, like, actual talented quarterbacks should definitely be running the air raid. Or like something similar to like a crazy, like free-flowing, get guys who are super fast and super quick out in space offense. Totally. Basically run the oop-de-oop every time from Varsity Blues. But like, there are not enough good quarterbacks in the NFL, I feel like, for this to work for everyone. But then again, like I say that as like we're in the era of Fitzmagic, and it's like working for him to just chuck the ball downfield to his awesome receivers.
But I think first off, the issue with the NFL has always been that they felt as if there weren't enough quarterbacks. Like they were drafting guys who sucked because they sucked in a certain kind of system, or they were average in a certain kind of system. And instead of just drafting a guy who was awesome at the college level and adapting their system to fit his skill set. They were trying to put square pegs into round holes for a long time, and instead they're just like, why don't we just change the board so that we have we have a square hole instead of for this square peg. Clearly there is a differentiation in the overarching thought process of how to build NFL teams, and that is something we've seen and we're still seeing at the NBA level, an overarching, a radical change in how to build. This is the kind of shit that makes my nipples hard. Like this kind of like big overarching meta crap when it comes to professional sports. That's the really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
The day-to-day stuff, interesting, but this is the good stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm at least interested. I mean, like, I'm not like a wild NFL fan, but I would definitely enjoy the NFL more if like half the teams are in the air raid, essentially.
But like that's the thing. Like college football will always have a massive advantage just because of the sheer number of teams and the chaos that can ensue because of it. But the intellectual difference between college football, where you can have a team that will only run empty sets going up against a team that literally runs a true triple option in a single game, like that is awesome to me. Whereas the homogenization of the NFL for so long was boring. And it was, this defense first, run it down on first and second down, and then maybe throw an 8-yard pass for a first down if you're lucky. But mostly it's just a game of field position. Like that homogeny sucked. And now we are seeing it break in real time. And it's going to leave a lot of teams behind. It's going to turn a lot, the parity, I think, is going to diminish significantly over the next few years. But we are going to see something, I think, really special because the game is going to be far more aesthetically pleasing. And I think there's just going to be a lot of differences. There are going to be teams that will zag, right? Like, so they're going to look at what Kansas City's doing and what Mahomes is doing and go, we don't have that quarterback, so we're going to turn into a 1960s offense. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know that the Raiders want to throw it back to like 1978 or whatever, like not even in rhetoric, like actually like they're going to run an old school wishbone. I saw a full house formation in the NFL this weekend. Like I'm all in on diversity in offensive play calling and defensive play calling, because diversity is usually partnered with innovation. And the NFL product was so stale for so long, it's catching up like rapid fire right now. And if it stays at this pace, I think the game is going to look drastically different than it even looked 7-8 years ago when they changed the rules to make it for more passing. It's going to look like a completely different game, and that's going to create a lot of incentive to get really weird with stuff, and that's what I'm down for.
What do we think the odds are that John Gruden is like literally spending practice time trying to create an actual time machine to move back to like 1978?
If I just love the thought of John Gruden. Of course, anytime I think about John Gruden, I have to do like the Frank Caliendo version of John Gruden's voice in my head, thinking about building a time machine.
Anytime that I think of John Gruden, I think of him sensually holding a banana and looking at it, being super excited. Like,
let me tell you something
Spider
about
2
this
wide banana.
This banana, man, this guy right here, man, this is, oh my God. It is so funny. Someone told me before I started this season, John is going to say a lot of stuff, and maybe 5% of it will be true. And I go, that's ridiculous. And I'm starting to think that he might have overestimated. It's really, really good. And I really, really hope that there is some sort of like sitcom-y, like John Gruden's doing stuff on the side, like building a time machine. John Gruden would be great on a sitcom, by the way.
Yes.
Like that
should actually happen.
Just call it like, Dr. Coach or something where
between him and Marshawn Lynch, like just exploring the world, like they should have cameras on this team at all times.
Right. Though then you would have to be pandering to the most delusional fan base in sports. That's the other thing too with the NFL. There's so much like team-centric media, and it's so delusional. I mean, you would have no goddamn. You think Fox News is not even close to accurate on what's happening in the world. This is like different planet nonsense that they push out. So like, yeah, there's cameras on Gruden and Marshawn Lynch all the time, but the cameras are apparently only rolling when they're directly addressing members of Raider Nation. It's really bad.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got here. I mean, again, my fantasy team is just taking an epic ass kicking because I'm an idiot and took Le'Veon Bell first in my draft.
What? I mean, was that just like a Pittsburgh thing?
I think he's like very, very clearly the best player.
I don't disagree with that, but like you knew that he was holding out, right?
I did. I just assumed that it would work itself out.
Oh, that was a bad assumption.
Yeah. I just assumed that it would all be fine.
Right. Well, because it had for so long, and now here we are.
Right. Like every time there are one of these situations, it just ends up, oh yeah, the guy re-signed. It's fine.
Here's my terrible problem in fantasy football. I drafted both Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, and so I've been playing Mahomes, which has been.
That's a good problem.
I'm trying to trade one, but people don't know what to give up for Aaron Rodgers at all. In fact, I'm hoping that someone has Le'Veon Bell and that he comes back, because that would feel like a pretty good 1-for-1 trade.
If Le'Veon Bell's back, no one is trading Aaron Rodgers for Le'Veon Bell.
I don't know, man. Quarterback heavy league.
Yeah, no. I took Tom Brady in like the 6th round, and my life is in hell right now.
Goddamn, man.
Yeah. I dropped like 160 points in the first week, too. Because I have 3 of the top 9 receivers in the entire thing. Or 3 of the top 6 receivers. Because I have Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, and Juju Smith-Schuster.
God damn.
And I'm still 1-2 because I have to start Duke Johnson at running back.
What is the name of your fantasy team?
Team Vicini.
I'm Tom Sula's boys.
I like
that.
I'm
a great photo of Jim Tom Sula giving a thumbs up.
I'm there for that.
We need more Jim Tom Sula in our lives, everybody.
We really do. Like, where is Jim Tom Sula right now?
I think he's Washington's defensive line coach, but like Drew McGarry? How do you actually pronounce his last name?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, he does like his weekly fun bag nonsense that are always extremely enjoyable to read, and clearly the number one traffic thing on Deadspin. And he'll do like the Jim Tom Sula like life tip of the day, and consistently the highlight of my week. So highly recommend you check that out on Deadspin.
Shout out to the greatest Pittsburgher, Jim Tom Sula. Just the most Pittsburgher ever. Like, can you imagine a person looking more like he's from Pittsburgh than Jim Tomsula?
No, he is a number one on that list.
I love it. I hope to reach that level. No, I don't. No, I don't want to reach that level of Pittsburgh. But I do love the fact that he embraces the Pittsburgh that he grew up in and does it well. He is extremely Pittsburgh. Extremely Pittsburgh.
To the salt in the beer chick. That is his number one, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. We're way off the rails.
I actually did that because you told me to do that. Is that a Tom Sula move?
Well, I knew about it before, but Jim Tomsula is about it, and that's all I needed to confirm my life.
Yeah, you told me to do that, and I agree with it. It's actually really good. It's Bud Light, right?
Yeah, just like a cheap beer.
Yeah.
Cheap beer, put a little bit of pinch of salt in it. Like, it's still a cheap beer, but it's got a little extra something to it. It doesn't taste as watered down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here for that. Dieter, tell the people where they can find your work. I don't think I saw a couple movies this week. I don't know if we need to go crazy talking about them.
I haven't seen a movie in a while, man. I'll come back. We'll do movie talk next go around.
Yeah. I will say, go see Searching. Searching was good. Predators,
Searching is good?
Yeah. Predators, not so much. Or The Predator, whatever the hell.
You saw the Predator movie?
Laura really wanted to see it.
What is going on?
Yeah, it was at least enjoyable. For a little bit. It was a mess, but it was somewhat enjoyable.
I heard it was just a completely off the rails. They didn't in any way have a plot or an idea of what was going on. It was an objectively terrible movie.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay. Just
it was totally off the rails.
Okay.
But the Predator was in it all the time, so it was fine.
Okay. What is this Nick Cage movie that everyone's saying is actually good, and we're getting a Nick Cage renaissance? Are we getting a Nick Cage renaissance? Is this happening?
I hope. That'd be really fun.
Is that something we actually hope for?
Yeah. Nick Cage is fucking batshit crazy, hilarious, and awesome. I would.
That's the thing.
100% be here for a Nick Cage renaissance. Nick Cage won an Oscar. He's an incredibly talented human being.
No, I'm aware of that. I'm just saying, Keanu Reeves is an objectively nice guy. And everyone likes him in that sense. I don't know. I feel like we need to tone it down with the overall whose career is coming back stuff. We didn't need Mel Gibson to come back. That didn't do anything for anybody.
We definitely did not need Mel Gibson to come back, but has Nicolas Cage done anything crazy other than buying a wild ass mausoleum and all of these dinosaur bones and then naming his son Kal-El?
No. He's pretty tame in that overarching thing. In the this is a whole wormhole conversation. There's the Johnny Depp class of weirdo, but at least Johnny Depp's a bad person. Nick Cage is just a weirdo. So, I don't know. I just I wasn't really clamoring for oh man, thank God Nick Cage is back. So
I don't know if he's back, by the way. Let's be clear about that.
I feel like there's a narrative forming that Nick Cage is coming back, and I'm just not sure who the hell was asking for it in the first place.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You can read my stuff.
Other than Zach Harper. Zach Harper is 100% asking for a Nick Cage renaissance.
Well, good for Zach. I mean, everyone has to have a cause, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
go subscribe to The Athletic.
I'm also at D Kurtenbach on Twitter. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, go subscribe to The Athletic. Keep me employed. I'll have a good thing coming on Wednesday.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, it's probably not that good. But if you click it and subscribe, that would be very good. Yeah, it's about all I got. I'll be back maybe later this week. Maybe not. We'll see. We might only do one podcast this week.
Listen, someone might have to talk to you after Jimmy Butler is traded back to the Bulls.
That's true. Jimmy Butler is going to need to be discussed once he's traded. So if Jimmy Butler gets traded this week, I promise there will be another podcast.
Okay, good to know.
Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.